All right, we're going to start. So my name is Alina Rosen and I'm a coordinator here at Aging Better in Birmingham. And today's presentation will give you an insight into how the Aging Better in Birmingham programme supported local citizens to take action and improve or change their local area. So some of what we'll touch upon relates to community power. And at its heart, community power is based on the principle that communities have a wealth of knowledge and assets within themselves. And that's really what today is about. So I'll briefly introduce our programme and then I'll hand over to our presenters today. So Aging Better in Birmingham is a programme funded by the National Lottery Community Fund. We aim to reduce loneliness and isolation among people over 50 across the country. Sorry, across the city. We just work in Birmingham. And we want people to have more social and community connections and be able to access more community-led support and activities where they live. So we believe that building upon the strengths and the skills of individuals and groups will really help to create sustainable change within communities. So put simply, we want Birmingham to become a better place in which to age. The programme was designed around 7 key activities, which allowed us to test new approaches to tackling isolation. And all 7 elements were co-produced with people over 50. Key ambitions for our programme was to influence policy and service design locally to create long-term change and prevent social isolation. And that's sort of where this has come from. And you can find out more about this on our website, which I'll also post in the chat later today. Today you will hear about one of our local action plans, which is one of 4. This one took place in Tyburn, which is one of our priority areas.
Right, hello everybody. I'm Phil Doan. I'm a relationship and contracts manager working at BVSC, predominantly on the Aging Better in Birmingham programme. At the time of this of the projects that are running that you're going to hear about today, I was at the time one of 2 relationship and contracts managers within the programme, where we split our 4 communities of interest, priority communities, between the 2 of us, with myself being responsible for our focus on our thematic group of older unpaid carers and one of our geographic areas of Tyburn. I'm going to talk to you a little bit today about volunteering in an Aging Better setting, and then give you some context about Tyburn as a place, why it was chosen and how it was chosen, and then how we went on to develop the projects that you're going to hear about a little bit today as well. So Aging Better. Aging Better takes an ABCD approach. That stands for asset-based community development. If you'd like to find out a lot more, I'm going to talk a little bit just in a nutshell about asset-based community development. If you really want to find out a lot more about it and the theory of it, Cormac Russell is a great point of reference to find out more about it. He's a real leader in the area. But in a nutshell, an ABCD approach is looking at what's strong, not what's wrong, to building on the blocks that communities have already. Not looking and saying, oh, we don't have this or we don't have that. Actually, we have all of these things that we can use to take our community on a journey. At its heart, Aging Better is looking for active citizenship as an approach to the volunteering within it. So, you know, we're kind of working, the idea is that communities work together and work for themselves, for the communities, as opposed to somebody coming in and saying, oh, we know exactly what you need in your area. How about we do this? How about we do this? It's actually bringing along those active citizens as one of those building blocks that we're talking about in this approach, their lived experience, their journey, their voice, and that helps shape the way things are done. I'm really chuffed, you know, I can talk about this for ages, but the beauty of it today is that we have our last speakers on today are just a brilliant example of the active citizenship. They're going to speak to you a little about the work they've been doing and kind of highlight what we're talking about here. The beauty of active citizenship as well is it really brings about sustainable change. Aging Better is really focusing on how we can connect people and get them out of isolation and loneliness. The beauty of the active citizenship within an ABCD approach is that it very much allows people to do what the community needs as and when, as opposed to just doing the same thing for a number of years just for the sake of it. What we're really focused on as well is that those connections remain in place So it doesn't matter if, for instance, we support or a reading group, a book club sets up in an area. You know, by the time we've come out of the other side of COVID, they may have been a bit bored of doing book club over Zoom, so now want to think about getting out and stretching their legs and being a walking group, for instance, or just meeting in the city centre for a coffee. And it's just about maintaining that social connection. Now, formal volunteering offers different structures of support. And in essence, in part, Aging Better at its very early stages did fall more into the formal volunteering. Our aim was always been to get to this active citizen approach, but we realised in some areas, and Tyburn being one of those, which I will touch on within the reasons why it was chosen, that formal volunteering is still needed, with that support there from an infrastructure organisation who can do a bit of hand-holding where needed. But where we did have that in some elements, we're now very far away from that due to the fantastic work that's been taken on the ground by some really amazing charities and organisations across Birmingham. In my opinion, one downside potentially to formal volunteering is that when the funding goes, or when the theme changes, and you know, things do change, that you know, Aging Better ends next year. When that goes, what's left? With active citizenship, we can help support sustainable models of engagement and continuing. Like I say, it could just be meeting for a chat where it was previously a book club, and it just allows that kind of group and that community to continue when an organisation like BVSC and a programme like Aging Better is gone. So it's just a little touch on kind of volunteering within a Aging Better setting. So I'll just move on now, if I can, to Tyburn and why we chose Tyburn. Defining its geography. I know some of you here today are from Birmingham and others aren't, so I'll touch on a bit about the geography of Tyburn and where it's located within the city, how it was chosen, why it was chosen, and also the project design and how we got to that point. So a little bit about Tyburn. For those that are aware of the city centre and its geography, Aging Better started in 2015, and at this point in time, the ward boundaries for all of the council wards across the city were different to how they are now. So the council undertook a change in 2018 to the council boundaries, ward boundaries, but we're defining Tyburn by those pre-2018 definitions. So we're looking at supporting communities in Castle Vale, High Pays, Birches Green, part of the Bromford. For those of you who aren't from Birmingham, I'll come on to where that is located within the city to give you some context shortly. But I just wanted you to understand, because currently Tyburn as this doesn't exist. It's across a couple of wards now. So how did we go about choosing it? So before Aging Better was successful in its final award from the lottery as the funder, we had to undertake some development work. And we undertook a research piece with our friends at Aston University and their Centre for Ageing. And they mapped over 20 risk factors of isolation and loneliness for older adults across the city. And they mapped those onto every constituency and ward within the area, within the city boundaries, sorry, and presented us really with a league table, if you imagine it like that. And that table gave scores with the highest at the top to the lowest at the bottom. Now, there's something to be said that obviously all city wards have older adults that are isolated and lonely, but unfortunately some are worse than others, as this research highlights. Put a link to the research in this slide here, and we're sharing the slides at the end, I believe, and also appendices of useful links. So this will come with it. So please don't worry about trying to follow this hyperlink at this moment in time. We did want an inner city ward, which we chose Sparkbrook based on this research piece, and an outer city ward, which was Tyburn. So why was it chosen? Why did it score so highly? I'm going to touch on a couple of those reasons now. The geography is the main, the built environment and the geography is the main factor here that comes into part. For those of you who aren't from Birmingham, I'm sure you've had the misfortune of being stuck in a traffic jam on Spaghetti Junction in your time when you're trying to cut through Birmingham. And this ward sits in the shadow of Spaghetti Junction. So the M6 cuts right through the middle of it. From Spaghetti Junction, the A38, which goes through to Derby, the double lane dual carriageway cuts through it, the outer city ring road cuts across it, and many other arterial routes. So the built environment really acts as an isolating factor here for communities. It divides communities by way of offering boundaries. So, Birches Green is first, then we up the road to Pipe Hayes into Castle Vale. So it really kind of builds those man-made boundaries around housing estates that leads to it. Also, for people getting out and about, being able to walk and get around, it makes it quite hard. It's not a simple task of crossing lights in the middle of a dual carriageway and going over. It's often that you have to walk up the centre of the dual carriageway to cross and then come back on yourself. We have no benches in many places for people to take a rest during a journey, and also no public toilets again. So, kind of really isolating people if they have to do a decent journey. Ironically, the area is built very much very bad city planning back in the day for the car, but the public transport links aren't as good as they are in the rest of the parts of the city there. There's no train line into the city centre from the area, and there's only one bus route from the city centre that goes through, or at least to the edges of each of these areas, all the way up to Castle Vale. So again, it makes it hard for people to get out and about. The area has a slightly older population than other areas in the city, as many people lived and worked within the area because the Jaguar Land Rover plant's there. But nowadays, a lot of those people have resided in the area and stayed in that area where the workforce come in and commute out. So there isn't always that sense of community there either. There wasn't much active citizenship either at the time when we were looking at this scoping Ageing Better out. So there was a lot of kind of requests for support from the existing infrastructure from the charities that were based there, with a bit of a lack of active citizenship. So that led to the local action plan projects that Alina introduced at the beginning. Each of our 4 priority areas, Tyburn being one, had £400,000 that we were going to invest in. And we initially envisaged having one project. We didn't define what that may look like. We always knew we wanted to develop it as we went and we needed, but we always thought, I think, it was going to be one project. We ended up with 5, plus 2 evaluations, 7 in total. And that is down to the co-production that took place. So going back to my first point around active citizenship, we ensured the community were involved all the way through. And I think that's a real key piece of Ageing Better learning here. We undertook community workshops with the community to try and help shape what they think might be needed. And we also did the same with key stakeholders that also involved older adults from within the area. Those key stakeholders were from the NHS, from the City Council commissioning teams, from statutory organisations and the charity sector as well. So we were able to then develop 5, like I say, projects based on this that involved citizens and active citizens in all elements of it, from design through to award, as we're a contracting authority and these contracts went out for tender, through to the award and then being involved at the other end as well. So the voice of the citizen was there all along. And they highlighted key themes for us, which were the built environment, how to get around and navigate around the neighbourhoods safely, kind of addressing trip hazards and safe walking routes and the like. And then kind of neighbourliness and active citizenship as well. So 5 projects and 3, you're going to hear about 3 of those specific projects today from our colleagues at Compass Support. It is worth noting as well that through learning throughout, we were able to reshape what we thought were the initial projects in the first place. So the last project we let was initially called the Care and Repair Scheme. Compass, who were successful in acquiring that contract, renamed it to fit in with another contract they'd secured, so it had that kind of synergy and buy-in from the public around that. But also it allowed them to take the learning from the area, which they'd already seen. We didn't envisaged initially that that project would involve somebody just going around with a clipboard and kind of having a look at what the trip hazards are, where the lights are out on that specific project. But they really bought into involving the citizens in that project, which was fantastic. And for that reason, it's kind of continued past its funding period, which I think Donna's going to talk about today. I appreciate I spoke a lot there, and I think I might be pushing my time limit, Alina. So I am going to hand back. There was a lot to take in. I'm here for the Q&A at the end, so I look forward to any questions you may have. But there's more interesting people speaking after me, so I'm sure that your questions will be directed at them instead. I have put my contact details in the slides here as well, so if you think about anything after today's event, please don't hesitate to drop me an email. Thank you, everyone.
Hi everyone, so my name is Sarah Powers. I'm the Health and Wellbeing Team Leader at Compass Support. We partnered with BVSC to deliver the Aging Better in Birmingham Community Organisers programme. Next slide please, Alina. So the programme commenced in January 2018, and as Phil has very kindly explained already, it was delivered across the Tyburn ward area of Birmingham. The idea of the programme was to recruit and train a team of local volunteers to work across the Tyburn ward area to support in delivering the aims of the Aging Better programme. Next slide, please. So the first thing that we did when we put the project together was we developed the training package for the community organisers. So that was an induction course and then a separate safeguarding course. The induction course itself was quite fluid throughout the 2 years of delivery, because we wanted to make sure that the programme was very much co-designed and that the volunteers really shaped the direction in which things went. So the safeguarding was, that was standard, that stayed the same, but the induction course we changed as we went. So the initial part of the induction course was around giving that knowledge to the volunteers around the aims of the programme, and the support that they could potentially give to the local area. Once they had that information around the project aims and the knowledge around Aging Better in Birmingham, the volunteers were then asked to create their own role description. So rather than us setting out a role description that everybody then had to sign up to, had to commit to, it was a case that they would, at that training course, decide for themselves what their role would be within the project. And obviously this could then change along the way as their skills and their confidence increased. This was also a really good way for us to get new ideas for the project, to shape the direction that the project went in. We had one person who put down on their role description that they wanted to support people to go and attend an activity, so actually walk them to the activity, which for us was great. And then as a result of just that thing on a piece of paper, we then developed a whole volunteer befriending service specifically aimed at helping people to take that step from being at home alone or isolated and being able to actually attend an activity with someone who could be there to give them that bit of support. Next slide, please. So the next step was volunteer recruitment. So we had our training package ready to go and we needed to get some volunteers. I believed from the very start of this project that it would be best shaped by people who had lived experience of isolation and or loneliness themselves. And I also understood that volunteering in this way could really benefit people who were experiencing those particular things at that moment in time. So step one for us was recruitment methods through GP surgery. So we really promoted the volunteer opportunity to local GP practices and really highlighted the benefits of volunteering to the volunteers, as well as the support that they could give to their local community. This actually worked really well, and we got our first 4 volunteers through this method. 3 of those are actually still volunteering now, and one of them has gone on to paid employment in a kind of support-based role. Following that, we promoted the programme through places of worship, pharmacies, and we gained some additional volunteers through those particular avenues as well. So once we had this new team, I think it was about 10 people at that time, and once they were settled and they'd done their induction and got to know each other, they decided that the best way to recruit more volunteers was to kind of go out on the streets and talk to people and tell them how much they were enjoying what they were doing. So we would do pop-up coffee clubs, and it was a case that we would have predetermined spaces, preferably a grass area, but not always possible, in some kind of street. We would go around a few days before, we'd put flyers through doors and say exactly where we would be and when we would be there, and just invite local people to come and have a free cup of tea or coffee with us, and some biscuits, but most importantly, have a chat. And during those pop-up sessions, we obviously had people who then engaged in other areas of the Aging Better project that we were delivering, but we also recruited a real strong team of community organisers from that method as well. And that carried on throughout the life of the project, and the pop-up coffee clubs are still carrying on now, actually. Next slide, please. So the project itself was really successful. We are very proud of what was achieved, and what the volunteers achieved was really impressive. I won't talk so much about the impact and outcomes of the project, because I know that MEL Research are going to be explaining a bit about that to you in just a moment. But I just wanted to highlight really that the key thing for me was creating this team of volunteers from all walks of life, all with different interests and different skill sets and different lived experiences. And I really focused on that initial part of allowing them to develop their own role description within their volunteering role, so that they could then, if they wanted to start at a much slower pace, maybe just support with carrying some of the coffee equipment, that was fine. And we would then support them to develop their confidence and their skills to be able to do more as and when they wanted to, if they wanted to. Some people just wanted to do the initial part that they'd said. Next slide, please. Okay, so where things are at now. So the Aging Better in Birmingham project was given an extension to deliver for an additional year. And that was for the Tyburn Hub contract, which we were delivering, or we are delivering. We actually went back to BBSC and approached them about the possibility of creating a hybrid model effectively. So it's the Tyburn Hub contract combined with the Community Organisers programme. And our thought process behind this was giving the volunteers the additional skills to be able to support local groups, local people looking to set up groups, local friendship groups, anyone who might be able to set up something that other people can attend that can help to continue to reduce isolation and loneliness in the area. So here we are in year 7 of delivery. It's going really, really well. We've got some workshops taking place where we're going to do some real intense development with the volunteers and anyone else who wants to get involved, actually, teaching them how to teach groups how to become a constituted group, how to set up that bank account, how to apply for additional funding, what funding might be out there in the future, how to support people to come to their activities who may have a disability or may struggle with certain things. So it's giving them those skills so that into the future, long past the end of this project, hopefully the legacy will continue, and they can continue their work, their wonderful work that they're doing in the local area. So I'm going to hand over to Leonie now, and she's going to tell you a bit about the work that she's done with the volunteers during the pandemic.
Thank you, Sarah. Keeping community organisers engaged during the coronavirus pandemic has had many challenges. Having weekly activity groups put on hold, and almost daily life was put to a standstill. No one knew what to anticipate in life during lockdown. However, we worked as a team and at all times to ensure everybody was feeling valued, appreciated, cared for and motivated. Although we couldn't be visible in person, we had to engage in alternative ways, and getting people digitally connected had its own challenges, like my talking right now. But it was extremely rewarding during the pandemic when we could finally all have a coffee and a cake via Zoom. Keeping up the communication was key during whether it be a phone call, a text message, cards, letters, anything. As we all know, effective communication becomes even more important during a time of crisis. It was, however, a huge breath of fresh air when restrictions were slightly always lifted, and we could enjoy safe walk and talks down the road and enjoy natters in the park together. For our community organisers, their passion is always helping other people in the community on a daily basis. For some, the activities are a huge part of life and routine, and we had to innovate new ways of engagement. Luckily, at Compass Support, we had a few projects that we needed extra helping hands during the pandemic, and we were able to deliver these projects because of the community organisers. Our wellbeing packs were a huge success and were delivered to those living alone and isolated and vulnerable. The community organisers were truly shining stars during this and delivered over 5,000 wellbeing packs. Support was vital during the pandemic, and building that support network was key, being that ear to listen to and just being that virtual face to see at times. We tend to feel stronger when we are part of a group, and this group definitely helped each other and others get through their toughest of times. Showing that you genuinely care and making someone feel valued when they are feeling their lowest is sometimes the best act of kindness we could give. And this has definitely been proven with how amazing our community organisers have engaged within the programme, doing what they do best and knowing how vital their roles are. I'm now going to hand over to my colleague, Donna.
So yes, so I led on the Happy Street Environmental Project, and as Phil alluded in his presentation, that really was about the physical environment. So that was part of the other Happy Streets Aging Better project, and that was actually looking at the built environment. Now, the challenge for me was that wasn't sort of the sexy project at that time, because everybody was sort of getting out there. It was a people's project, whereas this was actually looking at the built environment. And for that, knowing that the program was only for 12 months, at the outset, it was, well, how do I go about engaging people so they, they could run with the project, feel a sense of achievement, and more importantly, have a legacy to once the project was finished. So it was, obviously, I worked alongside Sarah and the rest of the Aging Better team. But in terms of getting people involved, it was identifying what their interests were. So from those conversations, from those consultations, it was asking people, well, what is your focus in terms of the environment? And so, people had different interests. You had some who were interested in improving the cycling routes, because people, in terms, if you know Castlevale and the surrounding areas, there's a lot of off-street, and cycling routes really is an area which really lends itself well for cycling. So straight away, people sort of were using those areas, but a lot of those streets needed improvement. So we had people straight away who tapped into that and says, okay, we're going to focus on the cycling route, getting improvements. So that was sort of one of the quick wins. A cycling group was developed, and that the leader took control of that in terms of getting other people to get involved with cycling. Again, like a number of inner city areas, some of the streets were they had litter problems, they had fly tipping, and these are all the things that people weren't happy about, but they sort of didn't know how to address them. So obviously these were sort of things that straight away made sense to people, in that these are the issues we're facing. We need to feel part of our community. We want to be part of the engagement team, but we sort of wasn't sure how to go. So straight away, sort of by saying, well, okay, well, this is your area of interest. Would you mind sort of taking the lead in terms of that particular area that you have an interest with? So people sort of took the lead, whether it was with cycling, whether it was with the litter picking, the fly tipping. Others were interested in just sort of just in terms of the generic improvement. So the other focus was around working with the local housing provider, which, for example, in terms of Castlevale Community Housing is one of the biggest sort of housing provider. So straight away is making those partnership association with the housing officers. So what we did, we had weekly walks or monthly walks with different housing providers. We'd go on different streets with residents, would identify those issues, and we would either get those addressed either with Castlevale Housing, or in other cases, obviously with Birmingham City Council as a local provider. So it has its challenges, because like everything else, in terms of when you're relying on other people to do delivery, to action things, not all the issues that were reported were actioned straight away. However, there were small wins. So for example, people would go around, they would pick the litter, they would they would just work with the neighbors in terms of walking the streets, identifying those issues, reporting them to myself. Nevertheless, they were empowered and were given the tools in terms of how to report issues themselves to the council. So, they were given to the reported through My Street app in terms of how they could log those complaints and repairs themselves. And so Birmingham City Council eventually responded to some of those repairs. Like everything else, money is always an issue. So in as much as we were identifying some of these issues for the built environment, we also had to be reliant on the City Council. So we did eventually get some sort of major long-standing repairs, but we didn't sort of achieve all the litter repairs that were needed. Nevertheless, residents could see that just by their own involvement, by their own engagement, they had made a difference. And that was sort of what made sense to them. It was the little things like just getting those streets clean, getting the cycle routes improved. In terms of the legacy as it stands for today, we still have litter picking groups that are operating in the area. So, you know, those have gone from strength to strength, different streets have come on board. The cycling club has gone from strength to strength, where they have applied for funding, and now they, you know, they have a cycling group operating from within the area. Castlevale Housing, as I've mentioned, you know, which was one of our partners, they have adopted some of these hotspot areas where they actually are proactive with their estate team, where they're going around and they obviously, you know, collecting all the rubbish and clearing the areas. So in terms of active citizens and getting citizens involved and engaged, sometimes you have to, as we're saying, it's not about what we want at the outset. Sometimes it's about what residents want and what appeals to them, because, you know, you have to understand what is it that they can see, that they feel is their responsibility, that they have a role in playing. And so that was how, in terms of the happy street, the physical aspect of that was how that sort of tied in with the greater or the wider project itself, in terms of getting citizens involved.
Thank you so much, Donna. That was really good, and Sarah and Leonie as well. So we're going to hand over now to Jenny Chen at MEL Research, and she's going to speak to us about the evaluation and some key learning and some finds from the evaluations as well.
So thank you for giving us the opportunity to come and share the finding and our learning from the two important projects under the Tyburn Local Action Plan. So my name is Jenny Chen, and I'm the owner director of the company MEL Research, and I was also overseeing the delivery of this evaluation project when it was live. So today we are here focusing on the findings and learnings from the community organizers and Happy Streets environmental project. And if you have any questions, I'll be happy to answer them at the end. So just a little bit information about us as a company. So we are a social research company with the ambition to make a positive difference to the society. And therefore, we were really happy to be involved in the evaluation element of the Tyburn Local Action Plan project, and just to do our bit to help make the program better, help to learn and deliver the project with a team, and then just to share the learning and see how the delivery can be improved and be more effective along the way. So how do we go about the evaluation? So the evaluation involved several elements and different stages. These included familiarizing ourselves with the project by reviewing existing documents, talking to various stakeholders, and carrying out scoping visits with project deliverers like Compass Cores. And we also carried out a baseline survey and a post-intervention survey with local residents to try to capture the impact of the project have had on them. And we also engage with the commissioners at BVSC, project delivery staff, volunteers and beneficiaries to get their feedback. And we also attended several relevant events to capture additional insights. All the inquiries and questioning we had for the project were guided by an evaluation framework to ensure that we gathered relevant evidence to help assess the impact and outcomes of the local action plan projects. So the 4 projects we evaluated were very different. They all have their own different timelines and their own design and purposes. And then also the final stage of the project delivery was affected by the pandemic. So all in all, we needed to be very flexible and pragmatic in our approach to the evaluation. So first of all, I would like to share with you our findings for the community organizers project. So in terms of the project itself, for the brief we got was that the project was aiming to encourage communities to integrate across the Tyburn ward and enable knowledge sharing about the areas, and also to promote community cohesion and encourage active citizen. So from an evaluator's point of view, what we wanted to find out is to be able to develop an approach to assess the overall effectiveness of the delivery of the project, and also what are the key lessons learned, what had been the enablers and key barriers to the project delivery, and then also if the project actually achieved the key outcomes that it sets out to do. In this case, it was reducing social isolation, increasing social connections, improving local residents' well-being and community cohesion, etc. And also, we wanted to assess any attitudinal change in terms of local residents feel more positive about their local area, their local communities. So from the evaluation, from our finding, we have highlighted 4 key achievements, and I think they are pretty in sync with what campus support Sarah has just highlighted. So first of all, we think that we recognize the biggest achievement is really the success in recruiting volunteer community organizers who have become really committed to the project. And by being involved in the project has actually enabled them to build up their own confidence and their sense of purpose to the community, and then enable them to be able to help the others in their local community. And also, the project was very locally focused, and that helped the community organizers build trust and get recognized by the local people. And the project also successfully linked in with Tyburn Hub and other local partners, for example, befriending surveys, social scribing within a local GP practice, involving volunteers in this whole process. And that basically just showcased a local partnership working. And also from the evaluation, we also recognized that 2 local activity clubs, they actually successfully obtained an Aging Birmingham in Birmingham funding to sustain the activities. So some form of sustainability has been shown there. In terms of the key outcomes, we assess the outcomes of the project by triangulating evidence from the baseline and post surveys, qualitative feedback from relevant stakeholders, volunteers and beneficiaries, and some wider evidence available to us. So overall, we found that there was evidence to suggest that the community organizer project has contributed to increased community connections, community cohesion, people's sense of belonging, reduced social isolation and loneliness, and improved well-being amongst the local residents in Tyburn. And we also found that the project has helped encourage active citizenship in this area. And the prime example will be through the pool of volunteers who were very engaged and actively involved in the project delivery. And from an evaluator point of view, we also look out for unintended outcomes, and they could be positive outcomes, could also be negative outcomes, and they all form part of important learning for future. So in terms of positive outcomes, again, the community organizers, volunteers, as a result of this project, they form a really strong bond and trust within each other. And that's a really, really positive thing to see. And also because of the project, over the time with their skills developed and their confidence grown, they were involved in a lot of unanticipated activities, and then to support those activities. And also because of COVID, the face-to-face befriending service had to be basically put a stop. But they were successfully involving it into a telephone-based approach. But because of this telephone-based approach, the volunteers were able to signpost people to other additional support if required. And also we got this estimate from Campus Support that about 45% of their volunteers have actually gone on to paid employment. And that is a huge accolade to how this project has helped the volunteers to improve their skills and then go on to help them secure paid employment. But the downside of it is that it also left a gap within the volunteer pool when people left for seeking other career development. And not many negative outcomes we have observed. One of them is relatively small, but it's just how you need to think about how volunteers, when they are involved in supporting other people, befriending other people, how their emotion can be supported as well. So what we found is the volunteers got they could get quite upset when the people they supported die. So, but Campus Support have helped raise awareness and provide support to the volunteers to help them cope better with the situation. And another challenge we found was also the project not being able to deliver very well in Birch's Green area at the beginning because of lack of community space. But as a result, they've actually also built a really good relationship with Birch's Green Primary School to have a space available for regular coffee mornings. So the key learning points for us, first of all, is really the project mobilization, how much time it actually takes to develop a project like this, and then to get people to be engaged in a project like this. You could argue that 2 years may not be long enough for the project to, well, from our experience, a project like this will take at least 6 to 12 months to set up, to hit the ground and get activities delivered, and then for the next 1 year for things to stabilize, and then you can start to slowly see the impact of a project. So it does take time. It's not something that you could just put in place and then hit the ground and run from day one. And in terms of the community organizer volunteer pool, again, the time needed to set up to recruit, train and maintain the volunteers, and for them to have the confidence to deliver the activities, and therefore to be able to show the impact of the activities they've done. And from what I've understood, only just under 1 in 2 recruited volunteers actually went on to become an effective volunteer. And that means that key learning there is that you actually have to recruit a lot more in order to get a sustainable pool of volunteers to deliver activities. And also, a good thing about the community organizer arrangement is that the volunteers have been, it was a very flexible approach in terms of volunteer management. So volunteers were able to give their availability and to tell Campus Support when they were actually able to deliver activities. But the flip side of it was that sometimes the project would struggle to find enough volunteers to deliver the activities. And in terms of the community activities themselves, I think Donna just said it needs to be really relevant, and it needs to link to the local resident interest. They need to be interested in doing those and need to be easily accessible to them. And a lot of the activities designed were outdoor based, so you have the seasonal and weather factors which need to be considered, and also forming a productive relationship with local supermarkets so that the project will utilize the outdoor space to hold conversations, hold activities with local residents. And the last is basically links to the first point about project mobilization, is that the time that's needed for a project like this to show their impact and also the amount of evidence that's available for us to be able to demonstrate the impact of the project. So as part of the project, we were required to utilize the data from the common measurement framework to assess the impact, but we had really low level local data available for us to do that. So we couldn't really utilize the quantitative data collected from those questionnaires to support the evaluation. And also the part of the project design for Compass Community Organizer was to utilize an impact app to capture evidence to demonstrate the impact of the activities, but the app didn't really work as intended. Next, I would like to move on to Happy Streets environment. So once again, the project was aiming to enable older people to adopt a healthier lifestyle, and by being involved in improving the local built environment, hoping to increase their connectedness, reduce social isolation, and as a result of improving the surface of the road, the physical environment, we could reduce falls and injuries for older people. And once again, from the evaluation point of view, we want to assess the overall effectiveness of the project delivery. What are the key lessons learned, key barriers, key enablers, and also if the project was able to achieve a positive long-term improvement in the physical environment in Tyburn. So from what we observed, the key achievement for the project was that there was a really good partnership working between the community organizer project, Happy Streets project, and then the Castlevale community housing officers, Cycling UK, and then the local women's group. So as a result of this project, we were able to, well, the project deliverers were able to form a good partnership working with some local suppliers and providers. And also, the project gave residents the opportunity to report their local issues and concerns and help raise awareness that they didn't need to be passive partners in their local area. They could take an active, proactive citizen role in improving their local area. And the regular patch walks, as Donna has highlighted, with Castlevale Community Housing Officer, have worked in identifying relevant issues that need to be addressed. And also the community housing is going to continue taking on responsibility for smaller patches of land, and that is a sustainable outcome for the project. So all in all, the project gave local residents the opportunity to report physical environmental issues directly themselves and to engage with the project. But from what we have observed is that the take-up has been quite limited. And we also found little evidence to suggest that the project has helped increase community cohesion, improve well-being, and reduce social isolation. But that's not to say that the positive outcomes are not there, because what we found is that the residents who are actively involved in this project itself actually could benefit from an improved well-being and become an active citizenship for their citizen for the local area. And also the Castlevale Community Housing, the commitment to take on this new responsibility to maintain small patches of land in Castlevale. And also the partnership working that the project has led to as a result. The negative unintended outcomes element, what we found is that there was a lack of buy-in and awareness of the project from the City Council at the beginning, and that caused us just some obstacles in the delivery of the project. And also how the City Council require repairs, physical environment repairs to be reported. is quite a rigid and prescriptive system compared to the community-based project, like the Happy Street Environmental, and how people actually approach issues. So these two systems didn't quite like go hand in hand. And we also found that some residents were a bit reluctant to report issues to the authorities, and then that indicates their reluctance to engage with the project. And also we found some uncertainties about who owns what land. So some areas was not really owned by the city council or Castleville community housing. So local resident was difficult. It was difficult for issues in those areas to be addressed. And another thing was that we generally found there was a lack of evidence of the outcomes of the reported repairs and concerns. Because different types of physical environment issues will have different levels of impact on residents' general well-being, health or safety, we didn't have enough details of the repairs reported and completed to be captured by the project for us to be able to demonstrate their potential impacts on local residents and neighbourhoods. So from our point of view, the key learnings were, first of all, a better partnership working and buying from the start. So a clear project remit and expectation needed to be established at the beginning, and engagement with the city council and learning about the nature of their reporting system and how the system can sit alongside the more organic, resident-led and fixed-term projects. And from the residents' engagement front, what we found that some residents felt that the branding of the Happy Street Environment project was a bit unclear, and it was less intuitive compared to the community organized projects, the walking mat project. Straight away, people could relate to those, but the Happy Street Environment project was less so. So they weren't quite clear what the project could and couldn't do. And I think Donna addressed this as well, how residents can be better encouraged to report issues themselves. And then that is really through finding the things that they are actually interested in and then they care about. And in order to better demonstrate impact, we felt that there needs to be a clearer reporting of outcomes so that we can highlight the project, demonstrate the project achievements. So overall, the key implications were what we felt had worked well overall was that the 4 projects we evaluated were delivered by 2 local providers. And as a result of that, they achieved a greater synergy between them, and they could utilize similar resource amongst projects, and that achieved a better return on investment. And also the overall projects, the project delivery teams adopted a really flexible and community-based approach, and that has worked really well. Volunteers were upskilled as a result and gaining paid employment, and also relationship with local partners were improved as a result. And also the project was really responsive to residents' needs and preferences. And I think that's really worked well for this specific project. Points to consider for future. From our finding, it suggests that the 4 local areas involved, even though they were encompassed into the Tyburn ward, but we found that they've actually all have very different infrastructure and needs for support. So this leads to the second point, and also isolated older people can be found within really specific pockets of the community. So a more targeted approach may be required rather than like a ward-wide approach. And also the apps and technology used for this project, we suggest that they should be reviewed and to make sure that they are suitable. And then also better monitoring data capturing systems to enable impact to be demonstrated. And also think about the legacy planning, sustainability of the project. So these volunteer pools, if the project was to continue to be funded and renewed, then how would the volunteer pool could be sustained, for example? And also setting realistic expectations, and this is from the Commissioner's point of view, having a really realistic expectations on what each project can achieve within the set budget and time frame. And I think overall it's just that kind of realization that not everyone wants to be active citizen. So our suggestion is that the funding resource should be focused on those who are eligible and really want to engage with services, activities available to them. So that's my presentation. Thank you.
Thank you so much. That was brilliant, Jenny. We're now going to move on to hear from Erdington Litterbusters, Rob and Dawn from Erdington Litterbusters.
Good afternoon, everybody. As you can see, we're from the Erdington Litterbusters. We've got 10 minutes. I'm Rob Gunnell, and this is my colleague Dawn.
Hi.
And we're from Erdington. There you go. We're local. We're sort of on the ground. And all that's been said so far, we'd like to think that, you know, we've been pretty successful in terms of active citizens, because I'm one of them, and so's Dawn. And I'm over 50. I know I look 49 and a half, but you know. And we started very small, really. There was only actually 3 of us when we started about 3.5 years ago. On Facebook now we've got 945. So it's, you know, it's something's working, isn't it? So I think what's happened basically, and whilst it started off as a litter picking group, it's kind of developed and widened its scope more by default than anything. And I think really it's a sort of you know, what people have been saying is that maybe getting people together, the local people together, in a safe environment has enabled them to do other things, because I'd like to think we've created a fairly safe environment for people to do that. And shortly Dawn will be talking about the other projects that we're involved in. As you can see from the pictures there, we're involved in all sorts of things: gardening, bit of street art, planting planters, and there you go, inflatable canal. I don't know where they're going, but it looks quite interesting. But just going back a bit, and when we started, we were very encouraged actually, because we actually attracted some funding. We've had funding from several sources, including Aging Better, and Aging Better have been very supportive. Actually, Alina's given me 10 quid to say that. So's Donna. So I'm 20 quid better off. But no, joking apart, when Aging Better got involved with us, it was really to do the Holly Lane planters, which is an area in the Erdington area. And it was just a series of consultations with personnel, including Donna, and there's a guy named Gary, I think, is left now. And it was really important, actually, I think, for Aging Better to get our views, if you like, because we are, I think the beauty of it and the strength of what we do is we are locals, supporting locals in the area. So the consultation was spot on in that sense. So it was kind of shaped and reshaped, and the kind of listening to, you know, what was going on in the ground, really. Just moving on from that, it's not just litter picking, as I say. I think what's happened is, maybe incidentally, but what's happened is friendships have taken place, partnerships have taken place in the area. That is with the local Muslim community, high street manager, with the local police, with the local councillors. Birmingham City Council have been supportive, so we've got links with them to personal level. There's a couple of contacts that we've got, and we built up those relationships, which I think has strengthened the group as well. And I think we seem to be going from strength to strength. It's great fun to get involved in. This is a great example of active citizens, and supporting people's mental health. So I could go on, to be honest, because as you can see, I'm quite excited about being involved, because it continues to kind of not just satisfy me, but you know, linking and connecting with other people and making friends as well. So there you go. So I'm going to pass you over to my colleague Dawn, who's going to give you some examples of some of the projects.
Thanks for that, Rob. Yeah, as Rob said, we started in 2018, and initially we started doing fortnightly picks. We would meet at the YMCA, and initially it was probably maybe about 3 or 4 of us, but that quickly grew to probably about maybe 20 to 25 people turn up on a Saturday, ready to get out there and litter pick. And then the great thing about doing the litter pick is people were getting physical exercise, they were meeting, connecting with other residents that they otherwise wouldn't have connected with, because, you know, people weren't going out or went out not as often. And then after the litter pick, we would have refreshments in the cafe, and that was a great opportunity for people to have conversation, talk to one another, get to know one another, share their experiences, litter picking, and just generally residents building up a community within Erdington. So yeah, we did the litter picks, and then we quickly realized that just doing fortnightly picks definitely wasn't going to get rid of all the litter. So we then decided to create the Adopt a Street campaign, which was basically, the idea was we would encourage residents to adopt their street or a green space, and we would loan them the litter picking kit. And we embarked on that, and that was gradually getting more popular, and got significantly popular during the lockdown, and numbers really increased. So currently we've probably got about a quarter of our streets adopted. So in Erdington, there's about 624 streets. We've got probably nearly 200 spaces that have been adopted, which includes green spaces and streets. And that was really, really good. And what you found from that is that people within their area were then going out together and litter picking their streets or streets in their area, and they were forming mini litter picking groups. So that was excellent. And in addition to that, obviously you'll see we've been doing some community gardening. We've done a number of projects around Erdington. We have a central reservation with about 43 troughs, and we contacted another organisation who supported us with buying the soil, the compost and the bulbs, and then we just filled those bulbs with daffodils, and that was just a really spectacular time, because normally there'd have been no plants in the troughs, and then earlier on this year the whole of the central reservation was full of daffodils. So that was really good, and again that was residents coming out and just chipping in and just getting involved with either putting soil in the troughs or planting the bulbs and watering the bulbs. It was pretty awesome. We've also done some graffiti removal and developed, as Rob said, developed links with Network Rail, also developed links with the council, worked collaboratively with the council to remove graffiti. In addition to that, we've also created some business cards, and what we do is when we're out litter picking or the residents are doing their Adopt a Streets, we'll give out business cards to people that are interested or want to get involved, and that's been pretty good as well. We've also had some media coverage. We've been on the BBC, we've also had media coverage in the local newspaper, and also we have a high street magazine, and we've also featured on there. So that's been really good collaborative work that we've achieved with other local organisations. We've also worked with local businesses who have also supported us with funding our high-vis jackets. And yeah, I think that's it. Is there anything else you want to add?
Just to add to that, I mean, what's really really good about the group as well is that there's people coming along to it. We don't know their story necessarily because it remains confidential. But what happens is that people are starting to trust us in the group, and they're starting to share with us things. And what we're finding is that I think it can be a bit of a lifeline. I think the gardening projects and the litter stuff that we're doing on the canals, because I think what's happening, I hate to label, but I think that some of them are probably lonely, some of them may be vulnerable and need some support. So maybe kind of informally that we are providing support to these people. And I think that's quite important. And I think that's kind of incidental. That's kind of the spin-off to this group, and I think it's been a real strength, and that will continue, I think.
Yeah, also just a big shout out to Erdington Neighbourhood Network Scheme for supporting us. They've really been instrumental in helping us purchase litter pickers, hoops, and also helping us to pay for refreshments. So they've been a real lifeline, thank you to all the funders that have supported us. It's been really a brilliant journey, and we're looking forward to moving on and doing more in Erdington.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you to our panelists today. Really appreciate what a great presentation you've given us, and thank you everybody for coming.